Okay, so this is our second day on these two halachos, Hilchos Talmud Torah, Aleph, Yud, Gimel. Oh, here, Chaim. We asked a bunch of questions, we answered some, and then we didn't answer a bunch of others. So we'll review, and then we'll try to answer the ones we didn't answer before. Isha shalamda Torah, a woman who learned Torah, yesh la sachar, she has reward. Aval eno k'schar ha'ish, but it's not like the reward of a man. Mipnei shalom nitzchavas, because she was not commanded. B'chol ha'osed davar she'eno mitzuva alav, anyone who does something that they weren't commanded on, ein schar k'schar ha'mitzuva she'asa, their reward is not commensurate with the, not equal to the one who was commanded about it, but it's less than it. So that we explained. On the surface, it sounds like no matter what a woman does, her Torah is not worth as much as a man's Torah. Really, it ends up being exactly not that, which is a woman's Torah is worth exactly what a man's Torah is worth, but she doesn't get the schar for forcing herself to do something that she's obligated to do, which is really more of a universal schar in how you relate to the activity, not the schar of Torah itself. And from the Meiri last night, in last night's shiur, on Chumash, so the Meiri on Pirkei Avos Dalid Beis, where he says schar mitzvah mitzvah, the reward of a mitzvah is a mitzvah. What he says fits in really well with this, because he says, actually I'm going to quote it, even though it's not Rambam Bekius, but it fits in really well with what we said, and it's something everyone should know because it's a fundamental. I'll share the screen in a second. Nezikin Avos Dalid. So the Meiri says on schar mitzvah, oops, that's the Rashba. Rashbam, I mean. Schar mitzvah. So he says, what is the schar mitzvah in this context? Because on the surface, if you say that the reward for mitzvah is a mitzvah, then that's circular, right? Why should I do mitzvahs? For reward. What's the reward in mitzvahs, right? So he says the meaning of reward in this context is, where is it? The meaning of schar in this context is its outcome or its fruit. Klomar, ikar mitzvah upirya hu hamuvan mimena. The essence of the mitzvah and its reward, its fruit, is the insight gained from it. Okay, is that hamuvan mimena is what you understand from it. And then he gives an example of like, what's the reward for Kriya Shema? As he says, you might think that a certain mitzvah is like a light mitzvah or an unimportant mitzvah. Shemin hamuvan she'eno reshumos. Oh, this is the bad text here. She'eno shemin hamuvan. It's not supposed to say she'eno. Reshumos hachakukos b'seichel pinos gedolos torios oyunios. That Kriya Shema is, a mitzvah kala can leave huge fundamentals that are embedded in your mind, either fundamentals of Torah or in philosophy. And then he gives an example, when you read Shema, it's an easy mitzvah to do, but you get conviction in God's oneness from it. And that's the schar of the mitzvah, So fits in really well that the schar that the woman gets from her learning is all the insight she gains from it. The only thing she can't get is the reward of forcing herself to do it. Okay, that was part one. Then he says, even though she has reward, the chachamim commanded, which Rav Makbieli says means essentially that they recommended, that commandment, he says never means isser. Okay, I'm taking his word for that. I haven't done a search in the Mishnah Torah for tzivur chachamim. Shelo yilamed adam es bito Torah. They commanded that a person should not teach his daughter Torah because the majority of women, their minds are not oriented to be taught. And they take words of Torah and they make it into words, they blow it out of proportion based on the poverty of their mind. So we answered some of the questions, but not all of them. Okay, so one question was, why does the Rambam think this about women? So the very fact that he says rov nashim, and the fact that he said earlier that when it comes to halacha, everyone can understand halacha, men or women, and the fact that he holds that women can get nevuah indicates that he does not hold that this is an intrinsic limitation in women, just statistically it's a limitation, which we now know is due to lack of opportunity and like the way that they work and the fact that they were constantly involved in all the household stuff, but women have were created b'tzelem Elokim just like men, and that's how they could get nevuah and learn halacha. So that's what he's saying. So we're working with the premise here that he's assuming that the majority of women are in this category. We said divrei havai is exaggeration because a shavua that is havai is when you swear that like the building is as tall as the sky, you know. So we said, what does it mean that they take words of Torah and make into words of havai? So we said, or I said at least, I theorized that they take halachos and they'll blow them out of proportion, either for, I assume, either for heter purposes or for isser purposes. You know, like the isser purpose, it reminds me, I've seen Bali Tshuva do this, but I think this is the same type of thing, that like when they warm something up in the microwave, right, in a non-kosher microwave, they'll wrap it 3 times because their rabbi told them that you should wrap it 2 times. And like that already is like, you know, like they just have no understanding of what the underlying principles are, but they'll just expand it based on their das. Or let's say like some people want to say that Chava with Adam Harishon, you know, that Adam said, don't eat from the tree because that's what Hashem said. And then she said, don't eat from the tree and don't touch from the tree, that she added something on her own, you know? So that's what I would think it means by L'divrei Havai, or they'll do the same thing with heterim, you know, like they'll, there's a, hold on a second, there's a joke, there's a halachic joke. There's not that many halachic jokes that I know.
Arab hat?
No, not the Arab one, that's the classic one. Yeah, I don't know how the joke goes, but the effect of the joke was something to the effect of like, there's this Baal Tshuva who like is like learning how to keep Shabbos, and like he like you know, his rabbi sees him like turn on the light on Shabbos, and the rabbi's like, what are you doing? Like, you can't turn on the light, it's us who are doing Shabbos. And so then the guy is like, okay. So then he like takes out like his phone or whatever, and is like illuminating. It's like, no, that, you know, I didn't mean just light. I meant like even your phone. And then finally, like the guy goes, and like the rabbi sees him striking a match, and the rabbi's like, what are you doing? That's the worst thing possible. And he's like, well, what am I supposed to do? He said, I can't turn on the light. I can't use my phone. Like, I got to go back to the old-fashioned way, like using a match or something, you know. Like the punchline was actually funnier, but the idea is that people who don't understand the underlying principle will latch onto particulars and treat the accidents as essences. And you could see someone who is not fluent in halacha, like dabbling in Torah Shabbat Peh. It's like the halachic equivalent of you have some symptom, so you go on WebMD and you diagnose yourself. You know, like that's all. It's a bad idea because you don't know the underlying principles of the body. And people do the same thing with like Googling for psak. You know, they'll just Google something and then like, oh, it says that the, you know, and then they'll just quote a random person, you know, says that this is mutter, and then they'll rely on it. So that's the thing I imagine of like taking words of Torah and making them, like expanding them beyond their scope, you know. Kafich theorized that it means that if they learn how halacha is derived, they will see that they'll see mountains hanging by threads, which means they'll see that certain fundamental halachos are dependent on little like diuks in the Gemara, and it'll cause them to doubt like the legitimacy or the authority of halacha, and then they'll basically view the whole thing as like a silly game, you know. And you see people also, again, not just women, but like balabatim or like, you know, people who are antagonistic towards Judaism, saying, oh, it's just like a loophole finding game, and like they won't understand that there are actual halakhic principles at play, and they'll just like say that, oh, the rabbis are just like, there's a famous statement by I think it's a feminist, a Jewish feminist, I think she was Orthodox or is Orthodox, that where there's a rabbinic will, there's a rabbinic way, you know. And that's clearly not true, because if that were the case, then we could be matir anything, you know. Yeah, I mean, no one's saying that there's no such thing as loopholes, but like, you know, no matter what you can do, you know, you can't. Yeah, right. The Ramatir Hotzad Rabbanan in a Carmelis. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Okay, but what we didn't figure out is why limit this to a man teaching his daughter Torah, and also I want to make sure we understand the afal pi. That's all he says. He says, bito Torah, and then he says it again, kol hamulamin is bito Torah. Now, if you wanted to be fancy, you could say that. I mean, right. Right. So that's the question, right? Is that, do you say, you know, that this is limited to a father and his daughter, or do you say that the Rambam is just using the lashon chachamim, and what do you call, and saying, that, I mean, are you saying to the extent where just like Ben means Talmud, then Bas here means Talmud?
Yeah.
Okay, you could say that. I mean,
I'm not for the fact that I'm new Ben.
Right.
I would say that.
Right.
I like this.
I'm reading that.
No, I just like bring in like the relevant source to I think it's also prove that let's say so I guess yeah I guess it's also no clue for everybody to see.
That's in the context of not in that context anymore. Completely going back into
Right. Meaning he does start off with Isha Shalom da Torah, right? So he is already talking about all women, and then this is in that context. Yeah. So I believe the Kafir disagrees with you, which doesn't mean that that's like definitive, but let's look at Kafir. And I have one copy here. If someone wants to take the physical copy, if not, I'll just put it on the thing. Either one. Okay. All right. So this is in Kafir's commentary on Talmud Torah. So this is going to be Os Nunhe on whatever page that is, page Reish Nun Tes. Okay, and we're not going to read the whole thing. Well, actually, we will. I think we will read the whole thing here. So we quoted part of this yesterday, but I just want to make sure we're not missing anything. Besota Perek Gimel Mishnah Gimel. That's what we read. Ben Azai Omer Chayav Adam Lalamed Espito Torah. Rabbi Eliezer Omer Hamalamed Espito Torah Malamda Tiflos. So that's the Machlokas Tanaim. Ben Azai says you're obligated to teach your daughter Torah. And Rabbi Eliezer says, anyone who teaches his daughter Torah, it's as if he taught her Tiflos. Oh, sorry, we didn't read the second Rambam. Sorry, got to go back because he's going to tie that in also. Amr Chachamim, Kol HaMelamed es Bito Torah, anyone who teaches their daughter Torah, Kilu Limdat Tiflus. It's as if he taught her Tiflus, which is silly, foolishness. And Bamei Devarim Amurim, but Torah Shebal Peh. That is only talking about Torah Shebal Peh. About Torah Shebechsav, Lo Yilamed Osad L'Chatchila. He should not teach her initially. V'im limda, but if he taught her, eno kimlan v'tiflos, then it's not as if he taught her tiflos. So our questions were, first of all, what is this adding to the previous thing? Clearly, this is a new statement. Tiflos is different than don't do it because they'll make it into divrei havai. Secondly, why is this limited to Torah Shebal Peh? Third, what is the status of Torah B'Ksav? Mimanav Shach. If it's not like teaching her Tiflus, then why shouldn't you teach her? And if it is Tiflus, or sorry, if it is, yeah. Right, yeah. Why is it? Yeah. Either if it is not Tiflus, then why not teach her? And why am I not people going to say the second half?
If it is Tiflus, then why is it?
Right, then it should be, yeah, right. It should be, yeah, exactly. Thank you. Yeah.
Okay. If there's no correct shitah in Torah, like maybe said the Hashem did not teach all the women Torah, so therefore I should not teach all the women Torah for free. So
fine, he doesn't bring that drasha, but yeah.
Drasha says just like how you for free, so you
right.
So to you will see each other's free. I'll show taught the men for free, so therefore you can pay attention to Torah.
I do have a
yeah. Oh, sorry. Before you share your thought, there was one more thing which we partially answered yesterday. We had the question of what is Torah Shebal Peh in this context, because it is unthinkable to say that they should not learn halacha, psak halacha, because then they just can't keep halacha. So already, unless you want to say that, but
no, I wasn't.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, and it's a powerful question given what we've been emphasizing about Torah Shebal Peh. So now the question is, what exactly is the Rambam's meaning in Torah Shebal Peh here? Yeah, I know, right? Yeah. You could argue that. But you could also say though that this is still. So that's why I'm sticking with. So I think that this is teaching Torah Shebal Peh to them, but there's that they could. Yeah, even halacha, right? Teaching it to them, but they certainly are chayav to learn it. Okay. Yeah. All right, what do you want to say?
Well, I was saying that
Say again.
I don't think there's no like contract of like difference between how I
By Torah
have
B'Ksav. Okay.
because like kind of reading that and like one is part of that, just one once and for that.
Okay, fine.
Then that happened.
Yeah.
But there's not there's a lot like room for like more things that are more
That I would agree with. Yeah.
yeah, like this is like something else based on this person's path. Like,
Right.
people are already coming to the understanding that they're not getting the whole picture from the it's one thing for person's path.
Right.
So why is it that it shouldn't do it like given, you know?
Right.
Because since there's no actual danger, then if you did it, fine. It's not like against it. But you can do it unless that they come to utterly turn it all back.
Okay, maybe the thing that's bothering me isn't bothering you as much. So I'm gonna say what's bothering me, and then you tell me again if what you're saying solves this. Why is prevent them from learning Torah B'Ksav at all? Like, or discourage them from learning Torah B'Ksav at all? Meaning, isn't like I'm kind of working with the premise that Torah is very good, and like everyone should learn Torah.
Right. Okay. So I'm saying the reason is that there's not that information is not going to happen.
Oh, because it's like a harchaka type thing.
Yeah.
Right. Uh-huh. But it's just not tiflos.
Right.
Right.
That fight, not like infinite, only after the beginning.
Yeah.
There is no problem.
Right. Oh, yeah, I hear that. I hear that. Regarding the first thing you said, it is interesting that he that's funny. The way you said it is there's no chashash of divrei havai and tiflos by Torah B'Ksav. It is interesting that he says there's no chashash of tiflos, but the divrei havai statement sounds like on everything. Like, and it sounds like not just the textual subject matter. It sounds like their minds make them take divrei Torah and put them into divrei havai. Yeah. Okay, let's look at Kafach and see what he says. So again, Machlokes Tanaim, which is Ben Azai says you're chayav to teach your daughter Torah. Rabbi Eliezer says if you teach your daughter Torah, it's as if you taught her tiflos. Okay, immediately there should be a problem here. If I ask you which one does the Rambam Paskin like, there's a big problem. So it looks like he Paskins like Rabbi Eliezer, but problem is that neither of them differentiate between Torah B'Ksav and Torah B'al Peh, right? Rabbi Ben Azai is saying you have to teach her Torah, period. And Rabbi Eliezer says, don't teach her Torah, period. But how do we know that tiflos is not all of Torah for them? Yeah, so the Kafach is going to ask that. I just wanted to bring that to your attention here. V'Gemara daf chaf aleph amudez tiflos sakadaitach. So he's going to go through some havaminas for tiflos, or not havaminas, some other shitos. Ela ema ki'ilu limda tiflos. Okay, so that's a diuk in the Gemara. It says, it says, if you teach your daughter Torah, you're teaching her tiflos. Are you saying Torah is tiflos? Ela ema ki'ilu limda tiflos. Okay, it doesn't mean that the Torah is tiflos. It's as if you taught her tiflos. I'm Rabbi Abahu, my time at Rabbi Eliezer. What is Rabbi Eliezer's reason? Dichsiv ani chachma shachanti arma. Kivin shenichnasa chachma ba'adam nichnasa bo armumius. So in Mishlei it says, I am chachma, I dwell in cunning. Once, so that's the end of the pasuk. Then the drasha is once chachma enters into a person, then cunning enters into a person. Okay, which plain shot, what would you say it means cunning enters a person once he gets chachma? Say again? Yeah, trickery, but how does that work with chachma? Like, yeah, right. As you learn how find ways to interpret stuff. Yeah, loopholes. Yeah, exactly. Rabbanan hacholkim al Rabbi Eliezer. So the Rabbanan who disagree with Rabbi Eliezer. Hi, ani chachma my avdile mi baile lichde Rabbi Yud Beis Chas. Yosef Rabbi Chanina. That's pretty good, probably, right? The Amar Ein Divrei Torah Miskamin El B'Misha Ma'amid Atzmo Arum Alehen. Okay, fine. So this is not really related to our topic, but the Rabbanan who disagree with Rabbi Eliezer, what do they do with the pasuk? Ani Chacham Shachanti Arma. They say that it teaches you that Torah only lasts in someone who sets himself up as an arum on them. Okay, I don't know what that means. Adkan. Nechlekol Mefarshim Pirsh Tiflus. The Chachamim disagree on what Tiflus means. Pirsh Rashi Shemitocha Hi Mevina Armumis VeOse Devra V'Hatznea. Rashi learns that it means she'll understand cunning and she'll do her things in secret. I don't know if that means she'll violate halacha in secret or what. Okay, that's a different chashash, that she'll do promiscuity in hasneah. That's astonishing. Meiri Pirish, this is what we read yesterday. Tefelim shemitoch havanasa b'yeser migdara he kona armimus ma'at. That just a second, that it's dvarim tefelim, that from her understanding that exceeds her limitations, she will acquire a little bit of armimus. Ve'ein sichla maspik lavana haruya, and her intellect won't be able to reach the proper understanding. V'hi savura she siga, but she'll think she got it. Umekashkeshes kipamon laharos es hachachmas alakol, and she will shake like a bell to show off her chachma to everyone. Meaning she'll basically like get a unreasonable amount of pride in viewing herself as a chachama when she's not. Yeah.
Well, this is not possible. Like, if you like, I'm sure that like there are a couple of characters or like as first for reason the society, the titles of women's education average also tend to be ones with a more sexual promiscuity.
Right, but that's not necessarily. I mean, that's correlation, but it's not necessarily causation. Yeah, even I'm saying even if you're right, like for example, it's probably because the societies in which women are free to pursue education are also societies that have greater freedoms in general, and less of a. Yeah, right. Like once women, I mean, my understanding is basically. I don't know, again, this is just from like documentaries and history books or whatever, but like that once the pill became available and women were in control of their own reproduction, then that freed them from basically being bound to the role of like household, like a homemaker, and then they went out and sought careers and other stuff like that, and then that was the sexual liberation movement, sexual revolution, like it all like came in concert, not like there's a direct correlation, but they come from a third factor. Yeah. Okay. So then he says, "Well, the Devarav hatiflus, going to the Meiri, hatiflus he belomedes velo belimudim." So I don't know exactly what he means here, but Kafik says, according to the Meiri, then sorry, I skipped a line. Harishim bavar hatiflus his hadrus v'his pa'arus b'ma'at hayadios shekansa. That according to the Meiri, tiflus means self-glorification and bragging about the little bit of chachma she acquired. According to the Meiri, tiflus is in the female learner, not in the knowledge. I think that's what he means. Meaning, it's not that the knowledge will be distorted; it's that the person who learns will get this bad midah. Aval Rabbeinu mafarish, but the Rambam explains hatiflus belimudim atzmam is in the learning itself. Shekasav motius divrei Torah l'divrei havai. He says they're going to take words of Torah and make them into words of havai. Lefikach pirshu lanu rabosenu. Therefore, our rabbis explained to us ki torsh bal peh amor kan. Now, I don't know who he's quoting when he says our rabbis. I don't know if he's like the rabbis in Yemen. They explained to us that when the Rambam says torsh bal peh here, ein hakavana halachos psukos. This does not mean psak halacha. Ela etzim halimidios. Rather, it's the essential derivations b'yugamomidos. That they don't have the intellectual ability to understand that a firm law is a resolved law is dependent on a hekesh or gzer shava. And when they see huge mountains of halacha dependent on a hair, they'll basically dismiss all of halacha as being like a ridiculous thing. And they won't know that these halachos were given to Moshe at Sinai. And they won't understand that all the derivations are just an asmachta and a remez. So I said this yesterday, I don't agree with this because the Rambam does not call that Torah Shabbat Peh, he calls that Talmud. Learning the Yugam Midos. So I don't understand what he's saying. Unless he's saying that there's a chashash that if they learn the Torah Shabbat Peh, then that will cause them to, kind of like you're saying, that they will inquire into, well, why is the halacha this way? And they will find these drashos, and that's going to be like, bad. Or you can say that according to the Rambam, maybe this is better. Maybe according to maybe this works out, and this actually changes our definition of Torah Shabbat Peh. That the Torah Sheba'al Peh includes the limudim, but understanding the limudim is Talmud. So for example, like I was saying in the Sunday shiur, like creates hadar, a fruit that is dar on its ilan mishana lashana, that is the Torah Sheba'al Peh. Or any of these other drashos of like let's say meaning how the drashos work, or which drashos are more valid and less valid, because that is how he says it by the drashos. He says yadin b'midos she'atorah nidreshes ben ad she'ida heachu ikar hamidos v'heach yotzei asur v'moter v'yotzei midvarim shalom and pia shmua. And whenever the Rambam quotes Dvarim shalom and pia shmua, he does quote stuff like banecha elu talmidecha, like that is part. The Rambam's including that in the Mishnah Torah. That fits in much better, right? So now I understand where Kafka is coming from. That if you teach them, so if you just taught them halachos psukos, you don't need to get into any drashos. But if you taught them Torah Sheba'al Peh, then you're teaching them all of these drashos, and they're gonna say, "What you mean? You mean to tell me that like because it says this one word here, then that's like where this whole halacha comes from? That's ridiculous, And then they'll dismiss halacha, yeah." Yeah, right. I'm trying. For some reason, I'm blanking on good examples where, like, I feel like people actually do this. Oh, I know a good example. Like, yeah, but I'm saying ones that you hear people say nowadays. I think you hear people say this, and maybe you guys don't hear people say this if you don't hang or.
I've heard so that often more in the opposite direction of why, as in say the example of why do we say it's kosher to have to cook it?
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Yeah. Oh, sorry. Say it again. That
as an example, I've heard why say it's kosher to cook an animal in fat?
An animal in its fat. Why would that be a problem? Oh, but that's like misreading. Oh, chalev. You mean because it says chalev? Yeah.
You don't read it chalev. Read it chalev. It's like
Yeah, I hear that. I've never heard someone say that. But what I thought you were going to say is, people do say that like the Torah only literally means cooking a kid in its mother's milk. But then the rabbis came along and made it up that it's all meat and milk, and then all of the like milk and meat stuff that we have now is just like what the rabbis made up. I've definitely heard people say that, and yeah, right. And then I feel like other stuff also, like when you learn about like Tom Ke'ikar, and you learn the drashos that they have on there. People don't know those drashos, but like they'll say like, oh, you're inferring from like the Zroa B'Sheila by like the Nazir that like that we care about Tom and Shishim and all this
Yeah. I think I've heard most like anything kosher slaughterhouse should probably be kosher because they're probably at some point shechting mothers and their daughters in the same day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right. That's interesting. I don't think that's what he's talking about though, because he's talking about misunderstanding. I mean, he's talking about misunderstanding the midos. That you could get misunderstanding from the Torah Sheba'al itself. Same thing with your other example. So it doesn't sound like he's worried about that. And I think probably also because I think what you said, people are aware that there is a Torah Sheba'al Peh. So if you tell, like, let's say you had a woman who is not exposed to learning, and she's reading the Torah Sheba'al Peh, and she knows that there's this thing called Torah Sheba'al. She's reading the Torah Sheba'al, and she knows there's this thing called Torah Sheba'al Peh, and you tell her, yeah, according to Torah Sheba'al Peh, this is the halacha. That apparently she's fine with. But once you tell her what the Torah Sheba'al Peh is, then she's like, wait, you mean you get that from this? That doesn't make any sense, Yeah, right. I'll give you one that they definitely would say. Okay, and I think I've heard high schoolers say this. The source for women covering their hair. Right? Yeah, right. Right.
Isn't that the source where they take it off?
Yes, right. So that's the source, right? And so they say that they do. Right, but the woman can argue like, well, why are you making that into a halacha? Like maybe her hair, that was just the style back then, in other words, because I think that they're in the same way that what do you call that students think that it literally says in the Torah that Abraham was thrown into a fiery furnace. I would be willing to bet that there are many women who think that there is an actual like like thou shalt not go around with your hair uncovered,
Right.
So like, not getting it off of an inference. Yeah. Okay. So now Kafka goes on. And this is where it gets a little interesting in terms of halacha l'maisa, not our halacha l'maisa, but according to the Rambam. Now regarding the psak, l'chora divri rabbeinu d'lo kaman. The Rambam is not passing like anyone. Rabbi Elazar ben Rabbi Elazar. According to Rabbi Elazar, ein chiluk ben Torah b'chsav l'Torah sheba'al peh. Hakol kimalamda tiflos. He holds that any Torah that you teach is like you're teaching a tiflos. Ula ben Azai chayav l'lamed es bito Torah. Shuv pastam. And Ben Azai also says, unqualified, you have to teach your daughter Torah. V'hayalo lifsok keben Azai kim de b'shas isa befirush de rabbanan plig Rabbi Elazar. So we should have paskin like Ben Azai. Sorry, hayalo. The Rambam should paskin like Ben Azai because in Shas it says explicitly that the rabbanan disagree with Rabbi Elazar. So that's also interesting. So not only is there no position that fits with the Rambam's, but also he's saying, according to the rules of Psak, the Gemara seems to paskin against Rabbi Elazar. So how can the Rambam say this thing about the Bito and Tiflos? V'im kafi shalomdim midrashas Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah b'chagiga gimel aleph. So if you're going to learn based on another drasha of Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah in chagiga aleph by Hakel, which says, so Hakel is a case where you bring men, women, and children. Right, so women are hearing Torah Shabbat Mishvichsav. So the Gemara there says, "Anashim ba'im lilmod, v'nashim ba'os lishmoa." It says that men come to learn and women come to hear. Okay, hayalo l'chalik bein lemida l'shmiya. So then the Rambam should differentiate between learning Torah and hearing Torah, which he doesn't do. Im naniach ki lemida hu limud yesodi ushmiya limud shtachi. If you're going to say that learning is like actual fundamental learning and listening is just like broad learning. V'im hashmiya hi halamida, and if shmiya is lamida, madua chalku chilkan Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. And if they're the same thing, then why is Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah differentiate? V'od shay mutar lalamdem l'chatchila. Furthermore, it is mutar to teach them l'chatchila, according to. Is he saying according to Ben Azai, or is he saying v'od? Yeah, hold on. Mutar lalamdem l'chatchila. What is mutar to teach them l'chatchila?
The same thing. How?
Oh no, he's saying from the drasha of Ba'os Lishmoa on the Av. Yeah, V'od. I didn't go there because it says V'od. Well, let's see. V'od madua higbilo es hamania rak al Av. Why does the Rambam limit the restriction to the father? V'lo aleha hi atzma, and not on. Oh, I see, and not on. No, I don't see. Not on her herself, or I'll call Ish Yisrael, or on any person. Well, here's the thing, though. You would not say that that there's any evidence in the Rambam of an Isser for women to learn, right?
No.
Okay, right. You're just saying that when it says the Av, it means all people, all.
I don't know why that's not covered.
Okay.
I would think that's one.
Okay, I mean, because he says Bito.
I'm actually wondering.
Oh, you could. Yeah.
What about a mother to her daughter? Because
Right,
the
that's
mother-daughter
a good question.
Explicitly excluded from the Av to Ben scenario.
I'm going to ask you to do something that I asked you to not do before. Can you see in your source Rambam if the statements about daughter are verbatim from the Gemara? Because if they were verbatim, I'd be more inclined to agree with you that the Rambam is just using the lashon of the Chachamim. But if he's formulating as Bito Torah, so then I would say he means Davka Bito Torah. Davka teaching your boss Torah. Yeah. Lefikach nira she'ein hamniya ela k'amor le'el. So therefore, it sounds like what the only restriction is what it says above. Klomar halamida b'midos is teaching her the derivations, and then midos he clearly means all, not just the yugam midos. Okay. V'hoyel v'lo kol isha asuya laredes la'omek hadavarim. And since not every woman is ro'i to go down to the depths of these matters, lefikach talu es haminiya rak ba'av. Therefore he makes the restriction only on the father. V'chol av roe es bito chachama, and every av can evaluate his daughter's level of chachma, meaning that a father shouldn't just teach his daughter these things, but if he sees that she's a chachama, then he could do it. Meaning, right, that's true. That's a good point. It doesn't seem like there's any restriction Yeah,
What was what stage is it going to end?
in Nashim.
Oh,
Well,
you're thinking of Tommy?
yeah. Rambam Pasan's like you show me a lot.
No, I don't.
Oh yeah.
I thought they could do it tomorrow.
Oh yeah. The Avos Bito.
Yeah.
I mean, there are two statements of Avos Bito. Maybe one of them is in the. But you know, I can also look at this on Torah and see if they have it.
Yeah.
Because they have a Rambam source thing. It's just not as extensive as yours. Let's look here.
They're all just guesses. Educate guesses, but don't guesses.
Yeah. Okay, Rambam, Mada, Torah, Aleph, Yud Gimel. Oh, these are not the right kind of sources. Oh yeah, Bavli Sota. Okay, so that's the one that we've been talking about probably. Kedushin Lamed Al, and then Bava Kama, and then Avodah Zara. Oopsies.
Well, let's see. Well, it was paired.
You know, and
I also
Oh, here we go.
A different. I got to.
That's the Sota one. No here. No here.
I remember also got to.
Yeah.
Like earlier, I think the first pair, where basically some woman was the teddy share husband guy, and so the Rabbi creates a series to get to. I guess how the husband get located where she said she needed the woman to spit in his eye. I was like, Susan, why are you mochal your phone instead of just getting a husband? And it's just saying forcing him to let her come. It's like, if I should mochal is covered for showing by so can I.
Okay, so let's go on in this psak though. Okay, again, I'm not sold on this psak yet, but he goes on. Lefikach ein near she'ein. We read that already. Right. The only restriction is to teach her the derivations. Therefore, they only commanded they made the commandment depend on the av. I mean, just to be close on what he's saying, sounds like he's saying he's not learning it as they only restricted the av. Sounds like they're saying that they placed the responsibility to see her fitness for Torah Pal on the av. You know, that other people are not responsible for that. What was it? Right. Yeah, I agree. I'm just trying to understand what he's saying. I'm trying to steel man his approach. Yeah. Yeah. There's no prevention for her to learn Gemara. There's no restriction on a teacher to guide her if her soul desires this. That's why the Rambam writes the majority of women and not all of them. So the Prisha in his psak says this in Yeridea. Okay, so he says, see, it's clear to me that the Rambam has a source that we no longer have. No, what is this? Nun Ches Aleph.
I thought the Rambam said he only took also from 5 places all.
Yeah, he did, but we don't have we don't have all of them though. We don't have all accurate copies of all of the text, all the Toseftas and all the Yerushalmis and all that other stuff. Those things weren't preserved. Even the Babli wasn't preserved as well as a lot of stuff. It's frequent that the Rambam's gears of the Mishnah is different than others. What was I going to look up just now? Oh yeah, Ota Roshi Tevos. Yeah, Nun Ches Aleph. I'm just not familiar with that one. Nun Ches Aleph. Nachal Esan, Nachal Arnon, Nachal Eshkol, Nachalas Avos, Nachalas Ariel. I doubt it's either of those. Oops, sorry. Yeah, all right. So that's I don't know what it is. Where did he go? Oh, Umasha Ratza Nun Ches Aleph Lahochiach. Oh, maybe it is one of these Achronim. And that which the Nun Ches Aleph wanted to prove, Minadarim paid Dalid Mishnah Gimel, Perak Dalid Mishnah Gimel, Aval Malamed Hu Levana Ulevnosav Mikra. So I guess there's a Gemara in Nedarim that says a person teaches his sons and daughters Torah B'Ksav, Lo Klum Hu, that's nothing. That's nothing. The Mishnah Nusach Rabbeinu, Lesa Girsa Ulevnosav. The Rambam's Girsa didn't have daughters. Ein Shama Hadrasi, see my edition. Yeah.
Ultimately, I don't quite found the last bit here. I did just see a story.
Is this going to be a relevant story for finding the psak, or are you just going to share a story?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Drashos Shmuel versus coming to Lomé.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gam kol yeser rayosav ein bahem kedei svia. That's funny. His proofs are not satisfying. Never seen that phrase in the idiom in Hebrew before. Lefikach ein minia gam al ha'av milalamed esbito halachos psukos bifrat dine Shabbos v'yom tov matbeach umishpacha. So there's certainly nothing wrong with the father teaching his daughter psak halacha, especially the laws of Shabbos, Yom Tov, kitchen halachos, and family halachos. Va'adif mi mikra, and that's even better than mikra. Kihu chayeha v'chaye beisa. That's her life and the life of her household. Yata l'masha kasvu ha'mefarshim. And now to what the mefarshim write. So what did he end up concluding about how the Rambam paskins? Does he paskin like Rabbi? I mean, it sounds like the way he wants to learn it. Okay, so that's one possibility. That's what he meant when he says there's a third shitah. Yeah, right. Because the other option, see, this would be I don't know if this is a radical thing. No, you can't say that. What I was going to say is that someone who no.
Oh, I found the line.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Yeah.
Here's the line. Not quite looking around the whole context. Okay, there's the line, but there's like context around.
Ibedes, mimeni shalosh meos kor or amarle. Amarle. Yisrafu divrei Torah of al yimsur lanashim. Although
there might be
That's interesting.
Although just to be clear, the timeline does not means without context.
Yeah. So this is in Sota Tes Zayin. Is this regular Sota or Yerushalmi?
Yerushalmi.
Okay. Yeah. Interesting. Yatsasa amru lo tamida Rebbe lo dechisa lanu ma ata meshiv. Rabbi Brachia, Rabbi Abba Bar Kahana, B'Shem Rabbi Liazar, Kumi Shahaylo Edim Hasra Hayam Meis Bebasin. Yes, we have to find out where the context goes. Let me just write this down this time.
Also, I guess we should always just keep in mind the orders are different. The order for Sota is not the same as the Bavli. It does not have the same start as the Bavli.
Yeah.
As in, like, it's not talking about the order.
Yeah.
And it is the varying orders.
Okay, so let's read this last part of the copy. Thank you for finding that. Kasav Kesef Mishnah, Haisha Shalim da V'chule, Kain Mashma Basota, Chaf Aleph, Ahad Tnan, Imish Zechus Tole, V'Gemara Sham, Became a Shekain, Ein Schara Gadol. Is this even our issue? Who's Makarak? Yeah, this is what the other Mefarshim say. Okay, fine. Yeah. So where are we at? We did not figure out.
I mean, I think it's very what happened if you have another more. I'm not comfortable doing it.
Yeah. Well, okay, let's just go over the options here. Okay, so.
That is pretty options in mind.
Okay, so why you
learning that I mean, only having
okay. But the Rambam does not say that you're chayav to teach mikra, though.
No,
yeah, I was tempted to say something similar to that.
I'm not to do that.
Yeah.
Another.
Right. That seems to me the most likely to my mind right now. That there's that we don't have the Rambam source.
Normally, in my mind, that Rambam is actually like the
Right. Right. Yeah. Meaning that he's just learning from Svara, that you can't say that that means the mikra is tiflos or is like teaching her tiflos. Yeah, that's also likely. Yeah. Yeah. See, you know what's funny here, by the way? Look at what Makbieli does. So he says in the last footnote, B'tor Shabal Peh, Lo halachos psukos hanuchutos la, not halachos psukos that are necessary for her. The she chayaves lasos, and which she's obligated to do. Kamo halachos shebasei zeh, like in the Mishnah Torah. Shiroi quote she yadayim akol gadol v'katan ish v'isha. So he says roi, but in the actual lashon of the Rambam, hold on, that we read earlier in the week, he says, hold on. Wait, did I just open the same thing? No, I didn't. No, this is the one from yesterday, from earlier in the week. He says for the beer house of the efshar she'edayim hakol gadol v'katan ish v'isha bali bracha bali v'katzar. He says women can learn it, not that it's roi for them to learn it. That was in Perek Dalet of Yesodei Torah. Oh, well, okay, fine. So let's look at the Hakdama then. Yeah, he does also quote the one I was quoting. I only saw that. Yeah, but does he say ish v'isha there? I don't think he does. Hakdama. Yeah, hold on. Kol. What they spell kol, Male. At the end. Yeah. Sudur via kol. No. Yeah, it doesn't say there. I think he's combining the two sources. Yeah. Yeah. So it's playing a little fast and loose with the words of the Rambam.
No.
Yeah. I mean, plain Peshat, if you had nothing else, you would just say that you can't. Yeah, what would you say? So a woman who learns Torah, there's clearly no problem with that. Sivu chachamim shelo yilamed as adam as bito Torah. And again, I'm going with this. I'm relying on what he's saying that sivu chachamim is like a recommendation. Okay, here's how you can say it. Okay, again, this is not how you do it shot wise, but it goes like this. If the Rambam just said lo yilamed adam as bito Torah, so then maybe you could say that means all women. I don't even know if that's the case. I don't think that's true. But if you say Tzivu Chachamim means that they recommended, then saying Chazal recommended to fathers that they shouldn't teach their daughters, it just means that those are the only places that was shy of this recommendation. Women were not going into places to learn. So the only occasion that they would have to learn would be with their fathers. So that's why they limited it to the fathers. I think that's a reasonable read. And that's the reason that they gave them is that that they're going to make a different Havai. And then that's also why they only framed it. No, there's like this. Here's the way to say it: there were no malamde nashim except fathers. And so that's why all the statements of Chazal about that were directed towards the fathers. Yeah, but the Torah Peh thing is still bothersome to me. I mean, the answer that we came up with is good, but I just feel like he should have said it better, especially because he uses the word Torah Peh to include Psak Halacha, Yeah. I will say just something, even though this is not directly from the Rambam, but in Rabbi Cheat's shiur, he has a good triplicate division, which I think is really good. He says that there are three types of Talmud Torah. Okay, there's Talmud Torah, B'Toras, Shmiras Halacha. Right, that's like the pasuk that was quoted earlier. Then there's Talmud Torah b'Toras Avas Hashem and Yiras Hashem, and then there's Talmud Torah b'Toras Masorah. Women are obligated, just as men are, to learn Torah, to know what to keep, what halakha to keep. Yeah, I'm going to say that in a second. Okay, and that you don't need a source for because it is. It's obvious that you can't keep halakha without knowing it, so you obviously have to learn it. Women are also obligated in Talmud Torah shel Avas Hashem and Yiras Hashem because they're chayiv in Avas Hashem and Yiras Hashem. So of course any learning that they do, whether it's science or Gemara or halacha that is contributing to their Avas Hashem and Yiras Hashem, then that they're chayiv to do. But what they're not chayiv in is they're not chayiv in the institution of Talmud Torah, b'Toras Masorah, like the Rambam said in the first 7 halachos in the parak, of teaching yourself and teaching others. The whole process of passing on the Masorah, they're not obligated to do. And all the statements about the discouraging Talmud Torah for women are made in that framework. That's how he learned it. But he wasn't saying that that's the Rambam shitah per se. He was saying that that was just the that was his own assessment of the sugya as a whole. Yeah. Yeah. So what do we not answer?
Let's figure out this. Okay. Well, I guess there is so to just figure out like one like how much that accords with the Bali, because you're saying the Bali seems costing like another.
Right. I mean, yeah, right. Yeah, but the best thing is that Rambam Paskin like the Yushalmi a lot, and if he did have a different Yushalmi,
You're showing me over the Bali.
it's a good question. I don't know. I mean, he does say Bavli is the most authoritative at the end of the Hakdama, but I don't know if like I don't know if you would consider this possibly. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure.
Okay, like, I guess the thing. I guess it does.
I couldn't hear what anyone said.
Sorry.
Yeah, what?
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Apparently, there's no clear shitah that's stated with the Rambam's chiluk of Torah Shabbat and Torah Shabbat. Yeah.
I'm not inclined to say like that.
Right. Yeah. That I now agree with you. Yeah. What do you want to say?
Never mind.
Okay. So someone gave me an article on what the Rambam shita would be about women learning Talmud. Yeah.
What do you like other Rishon plus? Like, is the Rambam a minority opinion in this?
So that's what Coppock started going into about the other Mefarshim. Right. Yeah. But if you want to look at it, though, I just want to show you where the footnote is. It sounds like he's saying that he has a little summary starting on the bottom of Reish. What was that? Reish Nun Tes, Kasav Kesef Mishnah. All from there all the way until the end of the footnote. Someone sent me an article about the Rambam shita on a woman learning Talmud. And I would say if Coppock is right, that Torah Shabbat Peh means understanding all of the derivations and stuff, then you think that Talmud is even worse than Torah Shabbat Peh in terms of the concern, right? And then if she has a mind for it, then she could do it, It's also funny. I feel like I've seen people raise the question of like, what was Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi's maidservant's name? Did she have a name, or is she just the maidservant? But she was like a brilliant chachama, right? Because she would always like listen in on all of the shiurim, and like all the talmidim would come and like listen to, like they would like be trying to figure stuff out, and she would like correct them.
I guess I'm laughing because the example that comes to mind is Stan instead of Torah.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's a good example, right? But I'm using this as an example for something else, which is that people say that if it was really usher for women to learn Torah Shabbat Peh, then Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi would not have taught in her presence. So you see that it's not usher to learn Torah Shabbat Peh, or to even, in other words, for him to teach his talmidim when she's listening and learning, that's not a problem. It's just to like specifically teach her,
Yeah. I got there. I got to your shop. Your short for then. And I guess we're doing this also in the Bob with someone else. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But I guess I can show you after too.
Okay, sure. You want to stop here because this is the end of the parak? Okay, let's stop here. And the next parak is going to be about Tinoko Shabes Rabban. And it's a very short parak, I think. Yeah, very short. Okay, so let's stop here for today. So yeah, have a good Shabbos, Oren and Shimon. Okay, stop sharing and end.